What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 9. We are joined by a good friend of mine, Brandon Wood, the owner and creator of the Gearist, another shoe review site that basically goes in depth with lots of different types of shoes, road and trail, and all sorts of gear. I'm super excited to have him on. He's a good friend of mine. We're gonna have a lot of fun tonight on Ginger Runner Live, episode number 9. Ginger Runner. Yeah, woo! Welcome to the show, everybody. You've already heard him. I would like to welcome my guest just right off the bat. Let's just get this started because this guy's fun, and I think this whole show is going to be a blast. It is Mr. Brandon Wood. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, man? Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed all 8 episodes up to now, and who doesn't want to be number 9, right before number 10?
Number 9. Number 9. So Brandon and I have an interesting start to our relationship. We met. Oh my God, sorry. Give me 1 second. I forgot to press pause on my own video, and the audio was just blasting into my ears. I was getting deafened. So Brandon and I have an interesting relationship. It started a long time ago when my sister and did my sister know you, Brandon, or did my sister know your wife?
So my wife and your sister, sometime in 2001-ish, 2000-ish, they were both singers. They became roommates. So then they both kind of sort of started working at Universal Music because singers don't always work full-time when you're starting out.
Right.
And then, your sister one day was like, yeah, well, my brother runs in those weird-ass toe shoes one day. And so we got talking about it, and there you go.
That's perfect. I mean, that's exactly it. Because from my end, my sister was like, "Hey, I have this friend who does Ironman and Ironman. I actually don't know the correct terminology.
Iron persons.
Iron persons. You got to meet him. You got to check him out." And I checked out ironbrandon.com, which was your website. I hadn't seen it yet. I was like, "Oh my God, this guy is genius. He's doing all these reviews and stuff like that." I had also started doing reviews at that point, but nowhere near the level of expertise and knowledge that Brandon has, because Brandon is like the source of shoe and foot knowledge. If you have issues with your form, are you still a coach, Brandon?
I do coach, but I coach I coach few people, but I love to coach very much.
Yeah. I mean, every time I've run with you, you manage to pick the little things that I'm doing with my stride. I'm like, dude, what am I doing wrong? You're like, well, actually, you're doing this and this and this. And it's like, oh my God, thank you. So Brandon is an expert in all things form, running, shoes, and I'm super stoked to have him on the show. As we get started, Brandon, we've already talked about it before the show, so I almost forgot. But tonight, I will be drinking Cooper's Brewery Sparkling Ale. This was given to me by a good fan of mine who just was like, you know what, I'm sending you Australian beer, and sent me a whole case. I still have a bunch of it, and it's super delicious. Brandon, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a Snapshot. It's a wheat beer from New Belgium. This is actually my only second one.
Delicious. That looks good.
Yeah, man, it is delish. Got some kind of tart flavors at the end. It's not filtered. It's excellent.
I will also be partaking in water tonight as well because I have to hydrate. I'm super dehydrated. It's super hot right now in Southern California. I went for a run today and it was it destroyed me. So I have a little sip of both at the same time.
Yeah, I saw that. You got to recover, man. Didn't you just run a 50K like a week and a half ago or something?
I did, but I felt so good. Like the next day, I felt so good after the race. The Gorge 50K was 2 Saturdays ago, and I felt great. I finished strong. I was like, oh, I'm not even cramping. Like nothing hurts, and I pushed it, and I feel really good. And the next day, I was like, you know what? I still feel pretty good. I'm really tight in some places, but I was out there filming the 100K race, which is the next day, and I'm running around the course just like, oh, look at me, I'm still running. And then Tuesday, I went for a little bit of a run. Wednesday, I went for a little bit longer. And it was Saturday, this last Saturday, I went for my first long run since the race. Ass handed to me on a silver platter. Just nothing was working. I was telling my fiance that as I was running, as soon as I started, I was wearing a hydration pack and shoes that I've worn 100 times. I felt like it was an out-of-body experience. It felt like the pack was completely foreign to me. The shoes were like wrong. Everything felt wrong. So the whole run was just, what is what is happening? This is not right.
Yeah.
So I had to call it pretty early. So
Yeah, the first Ironman I ever did was in 2009. It was Ironman Wisconsin, and I don't know why I did this, but I got back from the race, and we got back on like Monday or something like that, and I had New York Roadrunners. This is when I lived in New York. They have the half marathon series, and they do a half marathon in every borough of the city. And this was going to be the Queens half marathon. So you take the subway to this one stop, and then they bus you to the starting line. But they way underestimated, and so like 500 people kind of got screwed and were dropped off 2 miles from the course. So here I am, a week out from doing my first Ironman, and like you, I felt like I was like, number one, your ego goes, sweet, I just did this awesome thing, and so you're like, I am invincible, and then your body goes, no, you're not, and so they drop us off 2 miles. You got to carry all your crap with you to the start line, somehow drop it off in baggage, and then go run a half marathon. And I got to mile like, I don't know, 8, and my stomach and my legs were just like, and just from there on, it was, to call it a race is a vast overstatement, let's just say. But
okay, so I want to make sure that I plug everything, Brandon, at this point. That also sounded horrible. Can't believe I said that sentence. But Brandon has a website called Gearist, gearist.com. The Twitter handle is let me actually just pull this up. I have it written out here for everyone in case you want to go follow him. And Gearist.com, the Gearist on Twitter and other social networks. I'm pretty sure you're the only Gearist out there, so I don't think there's anyone else other than some kid on the Gearist.com that stole the URL. But
exactly.
So tell me a little bit about Gearist, when it started, what you're doing with it, and kind of give the fans an idea of what's going on with Gearist.
So Gearist actually, and I imagine that your story, Ethan, is kind of similar. It goes along a similar road, but Gearist started because I had my podcast, Iron Brandon Show, and yeah, that's a little bit cheesy and narcissistic, but it is what it is.
Welcome to Ginger Runner Live.
Right.
I mean,
touche.
I was running with, I had like 3 different titles in my head. I'm going, oh my God, nothing's going to work. I have to do it. Ginger Runner Live. Tonight, it's just called Ginger Runner Live.
I like it. Hey, it works. Very descriptive. You know exactly what it is. So all of a sudden, when my podcast and my website started to gain traction, then media companies started to reach out to me, PR companies. And like any good runner worth their salt, I am a shoe and gear nerd to the nth degree. And I mean, I love getting my hands on everything. And so all of a sudden, it's kind of remarkable because people are like, hey, will you try this out? Will you check this thing out? And then you're like, whoa, and there's never really, and Ethan, I'm sure you could speak to this too, there's never really an expectation of a review or anything like that, but that's kind of what you become known to do. You want to talk about these things. So they knew that I was going to talk about it because I was already reviewing things that I had. Then people started sending stuff that was not swim, bike, or run related. So I got like some trekking poles, or I got a pack, or I don't even know it's been so long now. So this was sometime in 2010. I started getting things that were not triathlon related, any of the 3 legs of triathlon. So I was like, well, I can either shoehorn this into ironbrandon.com, or I can start my own thing. So I took a few months, really went back and reviewed things that I already had reviewed, this new stuff that was coming in, and then on October 10th of 2010, I started Gearist.com, and we review like everything. I mean, we've got ski helmets that need to be done in the next few days because it's almost not any longer ski season. Skis, goggles, all this winter stuff's off the top of my head, but we've got trekking boots, we've got hiking boots, we've got climbing shoes, we've got packs, we've got all kinds of stuff. But because of my background, running shoes is definitely one of my favorite things to really, really just get down to the nitty-gritty on, because I like, we've got people like DC Rainmaker. I'm sure you know DC Rainmaker.
Oh yeah. Not personally, but very familiar with his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ray does fantastic, amazing work, and primarily his stuff is the super technical stuff. I mean, I will do a review of the Suunto Ambit 2S or S2. I will do that 2S. But it's not going to be like he'll get down there with like algorithms and all this crap that I just read it and my head goes So I like to do that with shoes, I guess, is one of my big things to do.
No, I mean, I think that, and I think that's what we have in common. Is when I approached reviewing running shoes and running gear and everything like that, I was even in the mindset of, well, at some point I would like to do cycling stuff as well and swimming stuff, and I have done a little bit of that, so I probably will have to buy the URLs Ginger Biker and Ginger Swimmer or Ginger Triathlete. Regardless,
TM, trademark.
trademark, they're all trademark. But bottom line is, I really found this passion for running shoes, and I'm such a geek at heart that, like, tech geek and all that kind of stuff. So when I found, oh my God, running shoes also delve into that same sort of geekery when you're talking about millimeter, heel drop, minimal, maximal, like all these different qualities that shoes have, and you start trying all these different shoes on, you realize everything is a little bit different. I have a good sense of determining what is different and what is good and what is bad. I think what I really love about your stuff, and what really just clicked for me is like, oh my God, Brandon is the man, is that you also add like a sense of humor to it. You're not super stoic about everything. It's not a report. You're actually writing a first-person perspective, and I know you, and I know that you put the time in these products. There are people out there who don't and act like they do. So it's good, and so that's why I definitely want to plug Brandon's Gearist stuff. And yeah, he does run the whole gamut: ski goggles, ski gear, snow, winter, hiking, backpacking, everything. So it's good to have you on the show. Today's topic is running shoes in particular, because both Brandon and I have a very distinct passion for running shoes. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about maybe trends in running shoes. We already have a ton of questions in the chat room. Actually, before we even move into the discussion, Brandon, there's a couple that I just want to make sure that we are addressing the live chat room, since this is Ginger Runner Live. Chris Rush early on says, what is the advantage of forefoot striking versus heel striking? Why should I consider a more minimally dropped shoe to a traditionally dropped shoe? I have my thoughts on this, Brandon. How about you?
Well, to be very honest, Chris, is it? I have my view on this has evolved quite a bit, and I will say this, that there's no advantage one over the other. However, you will do one naturally, and you will not do the other naturally. I think that, and this is to the larger picture of, and we'll talk about this when we get into the actual shoe discussion, but when you're running as the way that you were born to run, you were not, and pardon the book plug right there, I didn't mean to do that, but when you're running the way that you were born, you were completely unshod, you didn't wear shoes as a kid, your feet were nice and flexible, and your toes were nice and splayed, actually looking quite like an ugly foot might look today, but actually that's really beautiful and natural. But unfortunately, our casual footwear, as well as our running shoes, have morphed our foot and actually deformed our feet quite a bit to look the way that we think that a beautiful foot is supposed to look. When you run in a natural state, which is to say completely barefoot on a flat surface, you're more than likely, there's actually kind of like a 99% chance that your midfoot, actually if this is your foot, let's just say your midfoot, right about here in the lateral side, whether you pronate, supinate, underpantsinate, it doesn't matter. Whatever you do, you're more than likely going to land on the lateral side of your midfoot. And the other thing is that we get so hung up on strike, but are you actually really striking the ground? A true footfall isn't going to be a strike, whether it's on the forefoot or the heel, unless you're overstriding. But if you're barefoot on nice smooth concrete or asphalt, which is an unnatural surface, you're probably not going to strike anything, because your brain's going to go, what the hell are you doing? Stop doing that, number one. Number two, your skin is going to really react violently by, falling off and bleeding. So I guess that's to say that there's not really one over the other. What I would stress is to find out what's right for you, and the easiest way to do that, again, is to find some clean asphalt or concrete. Go for a 2-minute run, no socks, no shoes. Don't do it on dirt, sand, or grass, because those things are uneven and hide divots and things like that, and you can hurt yourself. But if you do it on something like that, you'll figure out what's right for you. And what I think is more important than any of those things is not overstriding, because there are plenty of people that think that landing on the forefoot is right. and they overstride, which is to say that their foot lands far out in front of their body, far out in front of their center of mass. You want that foot to land as close to under your body as you can. It's not going to land right under your body. That's impossible. You just fall on your face. But you want to get that foot close to your body because you don't want any stopping forces to happen on the front side. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, it answered his, and it probably answered a lot of people's in the chat room, because everyone was kind of chiming in based off of his question.
I see.
Saying heel striking is wrong, or heel striking is okay, I'm a natural heel striker. I think what we'll discuss a little bit later is exactly that. What shoes will work for you, how to determine which shoes will work for you, and what is the best way to go about that, or even, what is the best way to start changing your stride, because I had to change my stride. I didn't know at the time, but I was a very inefficient runner early on, and it wasn't until I started researching all of this stuff, all on my own, on Google, finding these reviews, finding videos, none of which explained anything except you're doing it wrong. But then finding, Brandon's blogs and finding Newton shoes. I remember when I first discovered them, it was like, oh, finally a shoe that kind of helps transition you into forefoot, midfoot running. And then from there, it was like, oh, there are lots of shoes that do that, but in different ways. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's talk trends. Early on, a couple years ago, I don't want to say early on because that would be the dawn of time. A couple of years ago, there was this whole push after, we've already mentioned it, the book Born to Run. Once that book came out, people started really talking about this minimalist movement. And when we should also talk about terminology. When I say minimalist, I mean a shoe that has barely anything between your foot and the ground. I would say zero midsole material, which is the EVA foam in the middle, maybe an outsole. So we're talking like the five-finger toe shoes are a good example because they have just a very thin piece of rubber separating your foot from the ground, and a couple other layers. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 millimeters total distance between you and the ground. That, in my mind, is minimalist. Reduced running shoe, and Brandon, please chime in if you
Sure.
have thoughts on this as well. Reduced running shoe is something in the range of anywhere from 4 to 15 millimeter separation between foot and ground. So you're still talking heel drop, a reduced heel drop, but it's a reduced running shoe. So it's not minimal, or it's not like nothing, but it still has a bit of cushioning that will protect you from rocks, from sharp edges, glass, stuff like that on the ground. And now there's this new movement of maximal, where we're talking major midsole cushioning, whether it's soft, whether it's firm. The stack height on these shoes exceeds 25 millimeters, exceeds 30 millimeters. So that's this new movement. So, Brandon, did you ever run in anything minimal? Have you run in anything minimal? And what are your thoughts on that trend in running shoes?
I have, and I would also add to the definitions that you gave that part of minimalism, number one, minimalism is a moving target. No, if you ask 10 people their definition, 10 runners, you're going to get 10 different definitions.
Yeah,
so that's a big thing because, a lot of people might consider, and as a disclaimer, I used to work for Newton, and some people would consider Newtons to be a minimal shoe. They're not in any way, shape, or form. Number one, their stack heights are too high for that. And number two, minimalism also speaks to the technology that's in a shoe. So no matter how low the drop or the stack height of, say, a Mizuno shoe has, if it's got that wave plate in there, it's automatically disqualified from that definition for me. This is a shoe right here I'm holding up that I'm wear testing right now. This is the Scora Fit. This is actually pretty doggone. There you go.
It's not the Fit. I want the Fit. This is the Scora Form, I believe.
Form,
yeah. But yeah, perfect example. I was gonna show it as well. Keep going.
Yeah,
sorry.
these are minimal shoes. There's really nothing to these shoes, really, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean they're very, very minimal. There's no heel counter, for instance, and things like that. I have run in everything from barefoot. I mean, look, I interviewed in 2009, I think. I interviewed Chris McDougall, the author of Born to Run, for my show, for my podcast, and then I went immediately out and ran 6 miles barefoot in New York City, by the way. Not always the wisest thing in the world. Just stay away from the needles.
How many needles do you step on?
Exactly. 0. If you step on them when they're flat, you're good. So I went out and ran 6 miles, and I had an okay time. You know, my feet were decent for that. But I've run in sandals. Actually, Teva used to make a sandal called the Zilch. I did a little bit of running in that. I've run in Five Fingers. I've run in a few pairs of Scora. This is the Fit. I've also run in the Phase, if I'm not mistaken. And I've run in a lot of different things that, you know, might not be considered. They're kind of that mid-range that Ethan that you were talking about. So yeah, I have run in all those things, and I think that all those things have a place, even if they're not your high mileage runner. I think that even Vibrams, which have kind of become this pariah at this point, Vibram Five Fingers have a place, and there's a utility for them, definitely. Some people choose to run in them, that's their shoe, but I think that a lot of people could benefit from getting in them once in a while, or just going barefoot once in a while, just to kind of reconnect with things. Because, and I assume we'll get into this more later, but we get so hung up in the technical details of shoes that we forget to feel right to us.
Yeah. Why am I holding this up? Yeah, it is National Beer Day, by the way. I just realized I meant to hold this up. That is why I still keep a pair of Scores around my house, because every once in a while, usually once a week, once every other week, I'll slip them on and I'll go for. I don't want to go for a long run in something so minimal, just because I don't run in super minimal footwear such as the Scora every single day, since I'm rotating through so many different types of shoes for reviews, that I would probably injure myself if I went from a Hoka or a really tall Ultra into a minimal foot shoe like this every other day. I'd rather use this as a workout tool than anything, especially since I rotate through so many different types of shoes. So yeah, I definitely keep a pair of Scores around because they are my minimal shoe of choice. I tried the Five Fingers, and I get that question a lot, is, hey, have you tried those Five Fingers? And it's like, well, yeah, I have, and they're probably the worst thing I put on my foot, and I threw them out. I mean, that's one of the few pairs of shoes I literally threw into the garbage, because the webbing didn't work between my toes, so I will never review them. But there are people out there who love them, and they swear by them. Mm-hmm. And as much as I was thinking about this today, is that I was like, oh, the minimalist movement is passing. People are going, oh, I'm not really into the minimalist thing anymore. I'm now into this maximalist movement. I don't think it's gone. I think it's just shifting. It's changing a bit. I'm actually seeing a lot more CrossFitters and people who are doing more cardio or circuit-based workouts in minimal or reduced running shoes, or even just flat, like rubber, essentially. They're the ones who are now kind of getting into these shoes and trying to get that proper platform on the ground and that stability and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see this movement kind of shift from the trail runner or the road runner who read Born to Run and moving it into the gym now. And I'm willing to bet there's a lot of gym rats, a lot of CrossFitters out there that have never even heard of Born to Run, but because this trend in shoes has kind of shifted, maybe the brands are kind of not forcing, but transitioning that type of shoe into another market. But what I'm seeing now, and Brand, you probably agree, you could disagree, but the maximalist thing, everyone's using that term maximalist now. I've used it in my reviews, you've used it in yours, and it's talking about, this is an example of a maximalist shoe. I have a bunch of Hokas in my closet. This is the first one I grabbed. This is the new Ultra Paradigm. Not even on the market yet. I'm really excited to be trying the shoe, but it is a maximalist cushioned shoe with zero drop. So they're taking that idea of a zero drop shoe and lifting it off the ground, I think 32 millimeters or something like that. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on this movement? Have you got a chance to put your foot in a maximalist shoe?
Well, I just did the review last week, last week, because today's Monday, of the Fresh Foam from New Balance. And
yes.
I was under this impression, and you touched on this, and I touched on this in my written review, and I'm going to touch on it
here. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Same color and everything, which I love the color, by the way. I think it's pretty dope.
Too. I think the looks on these is dynamite.
Yeah. But you and I both touched on this, and I'm going to do the video review of mine is coming out on Thursday, and so I'll touch on it there too. The marketing is way off on that shoe. If you look at all the marketing materials with the science of soft and all this kind of stuff, it makes it sound like it's going to be this super cushy, kind of almost Hoka-esque shoe, and it's simply not. So that's a different topic altogether. But my thoughts on maximalist maxi shoes altogether um, is that, I hearken everything back to the barefoot, because I think that I've seen a lot of people in my experience, they get this shoe and then they're like, well, I have this problem, so they throw this thing in there, and then that creates another problem, so they throw this thing in there, and they throw this thing in there, and they throw this thing in there, and everybody keeps stacking stuff on top of stuff. And so at the end of the day, no one ever just says, all right, stop, let's go back to zero and let's start and see what's going on. In the case of the maximalist shoe, if we're harkening back to, let's say, the barefoot running in today's environment, largely you're never going to find a place where you can truly go and run in a natural environment. You may hear, in Colorado in certain places, in California you can in certain places, but you're hard pressed to find those things. Running on concrete or running on asphalt, that's not a natural surface. And dirt and grass and things like that, those are much more soft and much more forgiving surfaces. And so there's almost kind of a natural cushioning. We'll separate for a second. Let me tangent off over here and to say that your foot and your body naturally provides a ton of cushioning biomechanically. It doesn't need that much to happen. Right. However, we've forgotten that because we've been in these traditional trainers for so long, these shoes that kill the ground feel, that kill our ability to naturally cushion themselves. So we go into now a shoe like a Hoka where somebody wants, and this is not to diminish the corner of the market that Hoka or whomever has gained in this maximalist arena, but these shoes are taking people who have lousy biomechanics, or at least questionable biomechanics on some degree, and placating their need for cushioning because they have lost the ability to correctly biomechanically address cushioning. I think my head's gonna explode after that sentence. Sorry.
But it's so accurate. I know where you're going with this, and it's so accurate. But yeah, keep going.
Well, so what I think they did is these people they've forgotten how to really truly cushion, and that's fine. Not everyone wants to go back and reinvent their own wheel, for lack of a better term. So they're going to say, well, here's this shoe. You can run the way you want. It's going to provide that cushioning that you need. And essentially, they've raised it up off the ground. Now, in terms of super soft cushioning, I haven't done a ton of mileage in a maximalist shoe yet, but I will say that I appreciate the fact that most of these are typically low drop, either zero drop as in the case of the Ultras, or like 4 millimeters in the case of like the Bondi Bs or whatever you're running in from Hoka. These are pretty low drop shoes. I appreciate that, but I mean, you're not running on something that's that soft. Even if you were an Australopithecus, or excuse me, the first Homo sapien that separated from Australopithecus running across the savannah, you're not running on something that's going to be able to give you the same amount of play and the same amount of give into that EVA midsole that a shoe is. I mean, no matter how much grass you're running on, your foot is not going to function like that. The best thing that I've come across that kind of plays the realm of both of those things is a shoe that has all that cushioning in the midsole, but then has a really very, very firm Strobel board. And if you don't know what a Strobel board is to the audience, the Strobel board, and this is a bad shoe because it doesn't really have a Strobel board, but it's what I've got right here. The Strobel board is basically that piece of material that sits underneath the sock liner that runs on top, between your foot and the midsole, underneath the sock liner. So it's essentially that terminal, that kind of transition area between the two. So I feel like if you want something that's got a lot of cushioning like that, you can go ahead. If it's got a firm Strobel board, the foot's going to be able to function properly.
This right here.
Yeah, that's going to be your Strobel board. And that Strobel board, if it's firm, your foot's still going to be strong, and it's not going to be sagging into this thing, But it's like sleeping on a super soft mattress. If you ever sleep on a really, really, really overly, or sleep in a hammock, you wake up and your back's going to probably be all jacked up, It's a similar thing.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I totally agree. So I won't talk specifically on this shoe because I still have yet to review it. I've only done a handful of runs in it, so I haven't put as much time as I want to. But I agree to a point, Brandon, and I want to talk about the idea of if we do have these surfaces that we're running on, roads, concrete, sidewalks, even like the front yard, so people's front yards, it's just a different surface than what is naturally supposed to be there. Or if we're going towards this biomechanical perfection, if that's what we're shooting for or striving towards, wouldn't having a shoe like a maximal shoe or something that is extra cushioned compensate for those harder surfaces when you're running on the harder surfaces, to help mimic that early Earth feel, or is that
Sure, I think so, but it's also almost, I don't want to call it a crutch because I don't believe that it is, but let's call it that for lack of a better word.
sure? Yeah.
But I mean, that's what it's doing. Is it really truly turning around and then teaching you that you need to land back under your body like we were talking about at the beginning? You want to land closer to your center of mass. You don't want to overstride. Is it teaching you not to do those things, or is it, by way of its extreme amount of cushioning, allowing you to do those things and ignore your natural biomechanical instinct? This is why I say I mean, everyone's scared to run barefoot for some reason. And I am not a barefoot runner. If I do 2 minutes every 3 weeks, I'm doing a lot. And most of that's outside with my kid. I'm running on the sidewalk. The only reason I say it is so that you can figure out what's going on. I had a guy the other day on a Facebook group that I'm a member of, and he said, well, I'm having all of a sudden shin splints. And he said, and I think it's because my shoes, he's wearing Kinvaras, he said, I think my shoes are wearing out. They've got this 350 or 400 miles or something like that on them. And he said, I'm a natural 4-foot striker, and da-da-da-da. And I said, okay, well, you're overstriding. There's no shoe is going to be able to take and act on your foot in relation to shin splints. There are other things that it can do, because what happens, shin splints take place when you're doing a braking motion with either a pointed foot or a heel strike landing out in front of your center of mass. And when you overstrike like that, that's where a shin splint comes from. So everything that has to do with that landing happens in the air. It happens while your body is literally, it's called the float phase. You're in your float phase. No shoe affects what you do when you're in the air. No shoe. No, you could be Oscar Pistorius sans feet altogether, and that was probably a bad analogy, but you know what I'm saying. You could not have feet at all, and what happens in the air, no shoe or nothing you wear on your leg is going to affect the way that you land. You land how you land. So if you land out in front of yourself, you're going to wind up with shin splints. Where did I get off on that tangent? Sorry.
The whole time I'm thinking, oh my God, Brandon is amazing. He's magic, and he knows more about human foot and anatomy and biomechanics than any human on Earth. This is why I brought Brandon on the show, because he is an absolute expert and knows pretty much all there is to know about the human foot, how it flexes, biomechanics, how things work on the body, and like I said, he's able to pick these things out pretty quickly when he sees somebody run, and so he is a huge source of knowledge. So if you guys have any questions, continue to keep them in the chat room. I'm seeing that there's tons of good discussion going on, so I want to make sure that I am letting you know that I am aware of them, and we're going to get to them in just a little bit. We just have a couple more talking points. So Brandon, what's the next trend? If we're seeing it go from minimalist to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the maximalist, what is the next phase?
I think that so much of what we've seen over the past, what was it, that Born to Run came out in 2007, 7 or 8, if I'm not mistaken, and what we've seen since then is shoe companies telling people what they want to do and what they need to do.
Yes.
We've had shoe companies say, this is how you should run. We've had shoe companies say you're running wrong, but essentially it's exactly what I said before. We've had shoe companies, instead of biomechanists, coming out and saying, well, you need to do this, and then you need to do this, and then you need to do this, and then you need to do this. So they're still doing that same thing. They're just doing it with, quote, minimalist or natural running shoes. They're doing it with less, so it's just a thinner Band-Aid. So I think what we're in a place of...
That's the term.
Yeah.
I agree, is that shoes have been Band-Aids. There has been a shoe that has come out that's been like, oh, well, this will put the Band-Aid on running long but not having enough comfort, so we'll add more cushioning. There's that Band-Aid. This is a
Right.
Band-Aid for making it more minimal, and this is the one that will help you trigger that midfoot, forefoot strike. This is a Band-Aid. It's allowing us to become lazy.
Well, and then unfortunately, a lot of the times, exactly what you said is those things that you add are going to cause different problems. And I feel like we're in a spot where the next trend, I don't necessarily feel like it's going to be with a shoe. I think that we're in a spot where even the big shoe companies, though there are a few that seem to be really, really resisting lowering their drops. And by the way, if I can tangent for a second off I will come back to this, but tangent real quick. The reason that drop is important to me is because your foot, when you stand on a flat surface, there is no difference in height from your heel to your forefoot. Zero. I don't care who you are. Unless you're a dog or a kangaroo, in which case your heel doesn't ever touch the ground. So if you're a dog or a kangaroo, you probably don't understand English
We
anyway.
have we have some dog viewers, just so you know. We
Do
have a
you?
couple dog viewers.
Well,
Yeah.
sorry, dogs. So your heels aren't touching the ground, and so if you're a human being with a complete foot, and I mean that seriously, I mean if you don't have a malformity or something like a club foot or something like that, then your heel and your forefoot touch the ground at the same time. Drop is important because anytime you start to move that, particularly beyond 6 millimeters for whatever reason, when you start to move that, you throw your body out of posture. Women wear high heels because it makes their ass look good. Well, why does it make your ass look good? Well, the first thing is because your body naturally has the inclination, as your shoes tip up in the heel, as your heels tip, your body has the inclination to tip forward with it. So if a woman wearing 6-inch heels should naturally be tilted forward 6 inches, but if they did that, they'd fall flat on their face. So what do? They lean back. So essentially they're swaying their back, which is popping your butt out there, which is fantastic if you're a dude who likes ladies, but it's not good if you're a woman who has back problems or has a back at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, if you look, I mean, if you think about it, if this is their foot in a high heel and this is their leg,
Right.
and you want to take their heel back down to the ground, this is their heel right here, the fulcrum. You want to take it back down to the ground. I mean, you're essentially throwing their posture straight back. They're falling flat on their ass.
Yeah.
It's just doing damage. I feel so bad for women in heels.
It's so, and it makes so much sense, and I get it. I'm not encouraging people to stop wearing heels. That's ludicrous. But
we have some guys in the chat room that will not stop wearing heels no matter what you say.
Shh. I'm in my other shoe closet. So I think that, so back to drop, I want people to be back to zero. I think that's really important. And back to your trend question, I think that the really important thing is that now it's kind of shoe companies have realized that they need to get out of the 12 millimeters used to be the industry standard, and that has begun to grow rapidly by the wayside. Yes, yeah, exactly, drop. And that's begun to go by the wayside, thankfully. And a lot of shoe companies may still have a 12 millimeter shoe, but is by no means the bulk of their lineup. And most companies now most of them have some form of 0 or 2 millimeter below drop, which is great. But I think now what we're going to see is we're going to see people that are being a little more introspective about their running. You're going to have people that they're going to say, well, why am I putting this thing on this thing on this thing? And they go, there's going to be a person who goes, I've been wearing this orthotic for 20 years because if I take it off, then I have this problem. And I used to say to people that had that problem, I go, really? So when you broke your arm 20 years ago, are you still wearing that cast today? Why would you do that to yourself? You have to go back to zero. Look, most of us, again, those without chronic conditions, or sometimes there's some nerve syndromes and things like that do cause different, like Charcot-Marie tooth syndrome, I think. These are different syndromes that cause issues with feet. I get that, and those people are excluded from this to a large degree. But for the majority of us, your body is going to take care of almost everything that you need to do. And I think the trend is going to be toward paying attention to what you're doing and kind of ceding back that control from a shoe company that's telling you, you need to do this or you need to do this. Because at the end of the day, There are no two people on this planet that are the same, and there's nobody that's going to land in exactly the same spot below their center of mass. I'm not going to land in the exact same spot as Ethan. Ethan's not going to land in the same spot as Mile Long Legs. Mile Long Legs is not going to land in the exact same spot as Meb Keflezighi. Everybody's different, and everybody is going to, I think, begin to kind of ask more questions, and they're going to realize that there's not as much need for all this stuff. I'd much rather have people pay attention to to running, just running and just being healthy, than to what shoes they wear. But there are people that their obsession with and look, you and I, Ethan, are kind of people that review shoes are a different animal. It's part of our, quote, job to review shoes and to get into the nitty-gritty. Right. Right. It's part of what we do is getting in there into the nitty-gritty details. But the average person, some people can get just completely debilitated worrying about what the drop is, worrying about what this is. I ran in the Mizuno Wave Hitogami. I reviewed it pretty recently, and that's a 9, if I'm not mistaken, 9mm drop shoe. But it sure as hell does not run like a 9mm drop shoe.
I noticed the exact same thing about that shoe. Was very hesitant about running in that early on. It blew my mind. I was against Mizuno for years until I ran into Hitogami and was like, holy crap, what have I been missing? Maybe there were other shoes that were as good as that one. I really enjoy that shoe, despite the drop. Surprised me.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. I think people, you took an educated risk in that case that you weren't going to like it, but you know what? Turns out that you liked it, and I like it too. But that's one shoe. I feel like people just have to you got to go back to zero. You got to go back to zero, and I think more and more people are going to start realizing that, and they're going to start realizing that they're missing out on the fun and the true and pure joy of running because they're so worried about what's on their feet. I think in the shoe industry, people are going to care less about what's on their feet, honestly. And they're just going to go, you know what, I like this shoe.
Yeah, I hope that's it. I hope that people begin to remember that what we're doing is fun and less about, the technology that they're wearing on their shoe is more important than the experience that they're getting out of the whole thing. I agree with you. What I was going to say as far as the next trend, I don't want to call it a trend because I think it's just something that just needs to happen, is also the zero drop. I don't think it's going to be zero drop minimal. I think I would love to see just all shoe manufacturers get away with these therapy shoes that have like certain amount of foam densities in this particular area for over, under, supinators, pronators, all that kind of thing. I like the idea of a zero drop shoe, and for the exact same reasons that I think it gets us back to that natural posturing to allow us to kind of get back to our roots. A lot of my Southern California running friends that I run with on a regular basis, a lot of them just hate talking about gear. They just hate it. Anytime I bring it up in running conversations, they're like, "Oh, come on, move on. We know you review shoes. We get it." But occasionally I'll bring up drop and I'll just hear them groan and they'll make fun of me like, "Oh, what drop do I need to get? Do I need to get 6mm? Do I need to get 8mm drop?" And it's like, I wish we could all just go back to zero. I really do.
Yeah.
That transitions into, I think, the question that I get most out of all of my reviews, and I get this in personal email form, I get this on comments on all of my reviews, I get it on Facebook, I get it all the time, and I mean, it's my fault for being bugged that I still get this question, but I think now I should try to answer it, and so anytime that anyone asks it, I can just forward this video to them. And the question is, what is the best shoe for me? As someone who has no idea how you guys run, what you look like, how much you weigh, how many miles per week you put in, any of that kind of stuff. I don't know what kind of shoe you should wear. So the advice that I give everybody, and Brandon, if you have any advice for this as well, my advice to anybody to find that pair of shoes that works for you is to go to your local running store. Go to a professional running store, the closest one to you, or if you have to drive a little bit further to get one that's really highly rated and has a shoe expert there, that would be ideal. But go to one that has a treadmill. Go to one where they can put you on the treadmill and they can analyze your gait. That stuff's all good. It's always good to have your gait analyzed. But Don't let them just put you in the first shoe off the shelf and then you walk out the door. Try on everything. That is my advice, is you go to a store, you get told what sort of runner you are, just so you can have that knowledge in your head, but then you try on everything, and then you figure out which shoe actually feels the most comfortable to you on your foot that day in that store, and bring it home and run in it, and make sure you have a good return policy in case you run 10 miles in it and go, oh my God, the shoe gave me blisters. I didn't expect that to happen, and you can take it back and switch it for the next one. But that is my advice, because you can watch a review, and you can go, oh wow, this guy really likes this shoe. I'm going to go buy it. Could be the worst shoe for you. You just don't know. Brandon?
One of the things that I found very interesting that I've learned over the years, and this is by no means a mandate against all local run shops, but I'll tell you that some run shops, true story, will not bring specific shoes out of the back.
Yes.
Specifically because, get this, ready for this, everybody ready, secret behind the curtain view here, because the boxes in which the shoes come are slick, and they don't want to have to stack 3 or 4 boxes and have them fall everywhere. No joke, that's a thing. That is a real thing. So I agree with Ethan a lot on going to your local run shop, number one. But number two, I think do your research. Do your research. and know what kind of know which direction you're going to want to look, because the tendency is it's like anything else. If an electrician comes to your house to fix things, this is why so many people get had in scams and stuff, because people come in and they're an expert. So if you go into your local run shop and you don't know what you want, they're going to bust out these shoes, and you're going to pull out 3 pairs of shoes, and you're going to choose one. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
You are the person throwing down the cash, man. So know what you want. Know what kind of drop you want to go with. Know what kind of, in terms of the gait analysis, I have some mixed opinions on that. A lot of people will just look at you from behind at foot level, and from the side, and that's not going to tell you the whole picture. You need to look at somebody from their waist. You need to look at somebody from above so that you can see the rotation of the hips and shoulders, being that the running gait is a series of counterbalances. You need to be able to see all these things. But I think more importantly than all of these things is, like Ethan said, find a retailer that's got a great return policy. Go in and take home those shoes and really find out what works for you best. And I'm not a huge treadmill fan. I don't make a secret of that. Find out what works best for you on a road, like for real. Put yourself in a real scenario. When's the last time you went to a 5K and they were like, all right, everybody mount up on your treadmills. Let's do this. It doesn't happen, So I agree. I agree with you, Ethan. It's, in terms of finding what's best for you. And by the way, I wanted to touch on what somebody in the chat room said. Mm-hmm. Lindsay here says, these minimal shoes are good tools to try to correct form, but they won't fix all your problems. She's right, and she's wrong. Number one, no shoe is going to fix all your problems, and if you expect a shoe to fix your problems, you're just going to have more problems.
Oh, nailed it.
You, the individual, the runner, is the person that is going to have to fix those problems. A shoe, it's like blaming your tires because you're a shitty driver and you rear-ended someone. Pardon me. I don't know if we're supposed to say shitty or not.
You can say shit. You can say whatever you want, because you just made a damn good point, Brandon.
Right. I mean, so but to her argument, a minimalist shoe or a maximalist shoe or a traditional trainer, no shoe is going to create your problem. But here's the thing: what is going to fix that problem? What is going to address it? And you're not ever going to know what is going to address it if you don't go back to zero. Look, you can sit there and make 2 + 2 = 4, a 56-line equation. You could count for variables till the cows come home all day long, and eventually 2 + 2 is still going to equal 4. But until you just go, well, 2 + 2 = 4, and you take it back to the most basic elements, you're not really ever going to be able to solve the problem in the most simple and efficient way necessary.
Totally agree. I'm so glad I don't have to say that. Now that it's in video form, I will send this video and that clip to everybody. And to dovetail on that, this whole zero thing, we're talking about the 0 mm drop. After watching the show, some of you might go, you know what? I'm doing it. I'm going zero. I'm going to go get rid of all my shoes and go to zero. Please be patient with the adaptation process, or you will have a miserable couple of months. When I first transitioned from regular running shoes, even though they were maybe 10 millimeter drop, to 0 to 2 millimeter drop shoes. When I made that transition, I went full bore, and it was the worst decision I made. My calves were tore up for months. I was trying to transition to various types of shoes, and I kept having to bounce back to more cushioned, higher stack height and higher drop shoes. And you know what? Be patient. If you have a pair of shoes that you're currently running in and you want to go to zero drop shoes, whether they're Ultra or other brands, Scora, Minimal, Maximal, whatever, make that transition subtle and over the course of time. And Brandon, we've talked about this before. Don't go off a mileage system where you're doing 2 miles in this, 2 miles in that, 1 mile in this, 1 mile in that. Make it a time-based system. So you're spending 10 minutes in this shoe, 15 minutes in this shoe. Don't worry about the mileage. Worry about the time, because it's really the time that's going to affect your Achilles, your hamstrings, your calves, all that sort of biomechanical stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because a mile for me and you is sure as hell a lot slower than a mile for Ryan Hall. I mean, if somebody, it doesn't. So take your time. 4 to 6 weeks is probably decent, but if it takes 3 months, who cares? It doesn't matter. Would you expect to go? If you went tomorrow, and I'm speaking to you as in everybody, unless you actually bench 400 pounds, then this doesn't apply to you. No one is going to go to the gym tomorrow and just go, all right, time to start throwing up 400 pounds on the bench press every single time I come to the gym.
Some of us can do that.
That's exactly. I mean, it's ludicrous to think you're going to go in and all of a sudden just blow shit up. I mean, you're not going to. So take that time. And by the way, this is a little secret about that transition. It's not your muscles that need to become stronger. And that's a kind of a misconception. What it actually is that your foot, since the time you most likely began wearing shoes up to this point, and I've tried to fight this. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I fight this a lot. You've been in a shoe that's got a drop. If you think about it, a 3 millimeter or 4 millimeter drop in a kid's shoe size 8, which is like not even about the length of the palm of my hand, maybe a little bit bigger, a 4 millimeter drop is a massive ramp angle for a shoe that's that small. So when you start using a shoe like that, and the more times you spend in like a higher heeled shoe, like a work boot or a high heeled shoe or a loafer, or if you're Ethan stripper heels or anything like that where you spend time in a higher drop shoe, then what's going to happen is the tissues in the posterior of your leg, the back of your leg, that's your Achilles, your gastroc, your soleus, basically your entire calf muscle group, all that is going to shorten up. And it's going to, because why does it need to be long? You're not walking around barefoot enough. And then all of a sudden, you're going to turn around and you're going to ask immediately for it to go bonk and lengthen those same fibers that have been shortened for the past, I'm 36 years old now. I didn't start running in more low drop shoes until I was probably 33 or 30, no, probably 31. So I spent, let's say, 29 years walking around and standing around and running around in shoes that have a pretty high drop or high ramp angle, but then I come forward to now and I want to transition in a week, and I want to take 29 years of backstepping and reverse it in a week. Don't do that, guys. It's not worth it. Who cares?
And I just want to point out, I'm 18. So I just want to, we have so much discussion going on in the chat room. I don't want to forget about you guys. Anything that we don't get to in the chat room during the show, we'll cover in some of the post-show. So be sure to stick around. We're going to go through a lot of the comments in the post-show. That's what it's there for, and it's the best part of the show because we're going to hang out and really talk shit. So stick around. So we're going to kind of end that shoe discussion and continue with it later because there's a couple things I want to do before we wrap up the show. First of all, it's a segment that we've all come to love and enjoy. It is, of course, Runner's Rant. Runner's Rant!
It's so frightening.
Yeah, it's so it's terrifying. My head blows up. So this is the chance for us to talk about those things that just get to us, that kind of drive us up the wall just a little bit while we're running, cycling, swimming, anything, biking. It's the same as cycling. So Brandon, I don't know if you've got one. I'll go ahead and start to kind of get this thing kicked off. My runner's rant this week. I might have touched on it a little bit on last week's episode, but it's trail hogs. Trail hogs it happened to me today, and I'm not poking fun or tearing apart CrossFitters, but in this particular instance, it was a group of CrossFitters because they were all wearing the same T-shirt that said the same thing about getting swole at their CrossFit gym. Going up the trail, they were running up the trail three wide and about 3 deep. So it was like 9 or 10 of them. I think there might have been a straggler, and they were just pushing up the trail in one big brick. I'm screaming down the trail, and I can hear a big group of people down a couple switchbacks. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll probably have to slow down. As I've learned my lesson, you usually have to yield to those hiking up because they are working harder. So even if you're running, do your best to follow that rule. And as I'm coming down, I realize they're definitely not going to move. They're in a chant. They're chanting like a boot camp. So I pull off to the side of the trail, and they provide me about that much of room as they squeeze by and continue to elbow me and push me with their shoulders. And I just can't help but go, you know what? You know what? You gotta share. You gotta share a little bit of it. I don't have to run by you, but don't be such dicks. Just stupid dicks. All right, that's it. That's my runner's rant. Brandon, do you have a runner's rant?
I sort of do, and it's sort of ironic. I have 2 things. One is a cyclist rant. So,
I love those. They're the best. They are the best.
Because cyclists are, and I say this as a cyclist, are pretty type A and kind of dickish. So before I get to my runner's rant, the one is that I had this guy I was riding, I forget where this was last year sometime, and I was riding kind of back home, and I was on this stretch that I really like to kind of blow it out on a little bit. I like to go fast, and so I had passed this guy earlier in the ride, and I mean, he was like just cruising, taking it really easy, and I'm fine with that. Do your thing. And I went by him, and no big deal. So then I see him like an hour later, and we're kind of coming down the same stretch of road, and he gets on my wheel. I don't have a problem with somebody catching a draft. That's not the issue at all. Next thing I know, here he comes to pass me on the left, which he should have, and good on him, to pass me on the left so close, with no on your left, no, I'm going to go by, no, hey, move your ass over. Like he brushes my elbow. And so then gets in front of me, and it's just the same, people do this on interstate too, gets in front of me and then goes slow. And so I'm like, okay. So then I just turn around, blow by him, and then I kick it up several notches, and he gets in my draft, because you'll have to work like 60% as much as you do if you're on the head, gets on my draft and just sits there. Anyway, that's it. I just hate that. Don't be a dick when you're drafting on somebody. If you get in front of him because you think you're fast, you better nut up, man. It's time to put up or shut up. So my runner.
You have to ask for permission to draft, right? I mean, especially if it's a stranger.
I don't mind. I mean, I don't mind. If it's just one guy, I find it's not a huge deal. But if it's like a group, if it's like a real legit Peloton, like if you all of a sudden wanted to sit in with that pack of swole ass CrossFitters.
Hey, can I run with you guys? Can
I run with you guys? Can I hit some wads when we get back to the box? Do you think?
I love wads. Workout of the day.
So, I don't know. It doesn't bother me if somebody drafts off me. What bothered me is that he passed and then went slow and didn't give me warning that he was passing. We were on a road with traffic. So, but my runner's rant, and this is ironic, very ironic, is people running around with too much gear. And I say it's ironic because
I have been guilty of that. I absolutely admit to having been guilty of that.
Yeah, but I mean, I would wager for you, if it's just shoes that you're trying out or wear testing on any given run, that doesn't matter. Okay, I don't count that. But if you've got a backlog of crap to wear test, and I know this is a horrible problem to have, right? If you've got headphones, I've had 2 sets of headphones on a run before because I had to get them done. But I see people wearing too much stuff and overestimating what they're doing. Like people that are running a 5K and wearing a flat 5K and wearing a fuel belt. I just kind of don't quite get that. Just because there's always an aid station on a 5K, and I'm not knocking fuel belts. I wear fuel belts or a pack if I'm on a long run, but I'm running in the desert, and it's not on a 5K around a hospital. So.
Not knocking the 5K distance, just knocking those who tend to run with 37 ounces of fluid on a 3.2-mile run.
Yeah, what is that?
I don't know. I agree with that 100%. Yay, Runner's Rant! We get to Runner's Rant. Since we have Brandon on tonight, I want to make sure that I do the quickie question quiz with him, where I ask a ton of questions, rapid fire at Brandon. It is time for the quickie question quiz.
Oh no!
Oops. There it is. Whee! All right, Brandon. So here's how this is played. I'm just going to read off questions, answer them as quickly as you can. Basically it. Real easy. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. What was your first race?
It was the Central Park 4-mile run for Central Park in Central Park, put on by the Central Park Conservancy in July of 2008. No, 9.
Natalie
8.
Portman. Natalie Portman or Megan Fox?
Natalie Portman.
Road or trails?
Trails.
First kiss.
Oh, Julie Keats.
Are you married to Julie Keats?
Nope.
Oh, favorite kiss.
Danielle Wood.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we get her name and drop. Favorite post-race indulgence.
Oh, I like a good beer, and I like to think that I'm picky, but as long as it's not like Guinness, I love a good post-race beer. Nice. Train race beer, baby.
Train race beer. Current running kicks. What are you testing right
now? Tomorrow, Wednesday I'll be kind of winding up with the Skechers Go Run Ultra.
Nice. I need to get some Skechers action going because people have requested it, and I want to try them.
Yeah.
Run, bike, or swim?
Well, all three, honestly. I used to, in high school, I was a nationally ranked swimmer. I used to swim 50-yard short course, 50-yard freestyle in about 19.4 seconds. So I like to throw down in the water. I like the bike because it's kind of like a faster version of running, or at least I can coast down hills. Although I tell you when I get the urge and I really just am kind of feeling it, 9 times out of 10, that feeling it is feeling it to go run on a trail somewhere and just to kind of cut loose from everything else.
Yeah. Original Ninja Turtles or the new Ninja Turtles?
Fuck those new guys. Original, baby. Here's the foam rubber.
And finally, your favorite ginger?
My favorite ginger? Ooh. Ginger runner. I'd go with Ethan Newberry.
Yeah. Correct answer, Brandon.
Thank you.
So that takes us to the end of tonight's show. Brandon, if you've got some time, stick around for the post show because there's tons of discussion going on in the chat room. I want to make sure that you guys get first dibs on Brandon and his wealth of knowledge. Remember that you can go to Gearist.com. You can check out @TheGearist on Twitter and all of those social networks. It is awesome if you would to do so, and let Brandon know that you saw him on Ginger Runner Live and that he was a great guest. We will definitely have you back, Brandon, if you are willing to come back.
Absolutely, and check out Gearist on YouTube.
Yeah, of course. How did I not put that in there? YouTube.com.
It's all good.
YouTube.com/TheGearist or Gearist? The Gearist. Tons of great video reviews. Someone in the chat room said that you did a 45-minute Hitagami review. Is it 45 minutes?
No, it was like maybe 17. I don't know. I'll look it up.
See, my reviews, I like to have an entertainment aspect to them. I want to make sure that I get some knowledge knocked over as well. Brandon does all of it. Brandon is fully entertaining, but Brandon will go into specificity is the word, and he will totally disassemble the shoe and tell you exactly what's going on with it. His reviews are extremely detailed, really, really awesome. So go check them out for sure. Subscribe to his channel. Yeah, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. I can't wait to come back.
Absolutely. So that is it for Ginger Runner Live, episode number 9. Don't forget that we are here every single Monday live at 6 p.m. I say we, and I just mean myself and whoever guests I have on that particular show. We are live at 6 p.m. Pacific every single Monday, and of course they're archived immediately, so you can go enjoy them, a couple thousand times every single week. If you want to share them or whatever. We're on all the social networks, at The Ginger Runner on Twitter, facebook.com/TheGingerRunner, GingerRunner.com, and at Ethan Newberry on Instagram. Hope you guys go and subscribe to all of those locations. Very much thanks to you for tuning in tonight to the live show. And if you're tuning in on demand, thank you as well. Stick around for the post show. We'll be right back. Yay!
Ow!
That was
Yeah,
great,
man.
Brandon. Yeah, tons of knowledge dropping going on.
Yeah,
If you guys are still sticking around in the chat room, stay, because so much discussion happened while we were getting deep into shoe talk. Brandon, if you see any questions in there, feel free to just shout them out. Okay, the Newton Runner, I believe that's JT, says, Brandon and Ethan's reviews are so good. The April Fool's video from the Ginger Runner made me die laughing. #instant classic. I haven't done an April Fool's video before, so I was really excited to do that. Hawk Daddy says, I'm enjoying a White Hawk IPA. Nice choice. Charlie Wingert asks, are the new Newtons more comfortable than last year's model? I actually have a pair. I have the Distance 3 and the Gravity 3s. And these are the Distance 3s.
That's the Gravity 3.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Oh, yeah. I'm used to the colors because the last Distance was yellow, but this is the Gravity now. They are a completely different sensation with the 5 lugs. They've got that extra lug there on the bottom. And it's nice to run in a Newton that feels like a Newton again. Boco AT. So this, it's very comfortable. I really, really like it. Have you got a chance to put these on yet, Brandon? Or?
No, Newton doesn't send Brandon shoes any longer. They
Really?
might.
Oh.
Well, we'll see. They just
Yeah.
switched PR agencies, so we shall see.
Oh,
There's
I didn't know that.
I'll tell you later. We'll see.
We'll see.
I've not.
But-
The Energy is the last Newton I ran in.
Okay, yeah, we both like the Energy, for the most part, I think. In my opinion, the new Distance and the new Gravities are fun. I think they add a lot with that extra lug. I can't tell you how tempted I have been to chop them in half like the Boco Ats just to see what's going on in there, but I'm pretty sure that it's the same, not the same as the Boco app, but the same as the last generation, where it's a little membrane with a big pocket of air above it. But we'll see.
Well, it's if I may, it's not so much
Please.
a pocket of air as it is just a hollow chamber, because the
Chamber.
springiness doesn't come from. It comes from the membrane, or that's where it's supposed to come from, rather than the chamber above it.
That's a good point, because they're not Nike Air, like those little bubbles of plastic filled with air. They're not that.
Correct.
I am looking to transition from Saucony. Go ahead, sorry.
That's exactly the same thing I was about to read out.
Yeah, transition from Saucony Convaras to Newton's. Thoughts, Brandon?
I think it's not going to be much of a transition. I mean, you're going 4 millimeters to 4 millimeters. Newton is not such a radically different shoe. They were in 2007 and 2008. They're not now in terms of drop. They're certainly going to be different in the sensation, but they're not something. I mean, it's not going from a Brooks Beast to a Newton.
It's the lugs that you're just going to have to get used to. That sensation under the forefoot that there is
right.
Stuff there, stuff that you're going to be working with. So I agree. I think it's the sensation you're going to have to get used to.
Exactly, which is a lot easier of a transition than muscle stretching, musculature transition. Yeah.
Why
Somebody
don't
says
you guys?
Here, somebody
yeah.
said, "What do you think about the Hitagami for marathon distance?" I think it'd be fine.
Yeah, I think we just fine. I did a half marathon. The half marathon was like the first time I was like, oh, I'm going to try these in a race of 13 miles, and they did great. I was expecting some sort of foot pain just from there's not a ton of stack height in them, so I was expecting a little bit of forefoot pain. Nothing. They were great. If your foot is used to them, training in them on a regular basis, the marathon I totally think will be just fine. Absolutely.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, again, I'm rotating through 5, 6, 7 pairs of shoes at a time, so it's hard to remember going, oh, can I race a marathon in that particular shoe that I ran these specific distances in? And in that particular case, I would trust the Hitagami to do it for sure.
This is one thing, Ethan, that I don't think we really touched on, but it does become, I have to say, it's a good problem to have, but reviewing so many shoes, it gets a little kind of muddled in your head. On the bright side, you could probably run a race in tissue boxes and be okay.
Now I'm picturing that, and I'm like, actually,
that would work. Some guy I saw ran like a 2:47 marathon in flip-flops.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's just not fair.
Come on.
So I actually, this is something that I kind of, we touched on form, but this is actually a good question. Lori Hall in the chat says, I run way up on my forefoot, so the rest of the shoe doesn't really matter. I need a light, cushy shoe with room. I work in bars. Is there a better shoe out there for me? First thing I would say is that if you're way up on your forefoot and you're not letting your heel settle to the ground, you're running in a sprinter's gait and you're not being very efficient. And that is a generalization. Sure, there are some people who naturally feel that way, but I would really, really, really strongly encourage you to, anybody that's landing way up on the forefoot, I would encourage people to let that heel really settle to the ground. Your heel should touch the ground when you run. I'm not saying
not first,
right,
but at some point in the gait, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'd be really wary of that. As for if there's a better shoe for you, Lori, I mean, a Kinvara is a great shoe. There have been some durability issues from time to time, but in terms of the actual function of the shoe, I think you'd be fine. But if you're also, the other thing to add is that if you are way up on your forefoot and you're not letting the heel touch the ground, then you're effectively probably in a 12 to 14 millimeter drop posture. So you could run in 0 drop, you could run in 12 millimeter drop. It probably isn't going to matter.
I mean, if you look at the bottom of your shoes, you should see some wear in the heel. I know that all shoes that I wear, even though I'm a forefoot, midfoot runner, I will have wear in my heels, and that's because as you strike, if you're midfoot or forefoot, you'll strike here, but your foot will settle down and push back off, right? So your whole leg and your whole foot and the ankle system biomechanically is a spring. So throughout your entire gait, your whole bottom of your foot will touch the ground. So you will get, even going downhills, when you're going downhills, you will naturally, I don't want to say heel strike, but you'll definitely get that edge for sure going down a hill. I mean,
I'd say also
to help eliminate that. But.
If anybody is listening, this may be a question or not, I don't know, but what you just said, Ethan brought this up. If you have trouble running downhills and you're concerned with that, and the tendency is to overstride because the ground is falling away from you, so you naturally overstride. But do butt kicks when you're going down a hill, and what'll happen is your foot will land right under your body. So that's a good way to go down the hill safely.
It's weird and it's uncomfortable, but it works. Sally McRae, who's been on the show a number of times, is one of the fastest downhill runners I have ever seen, male or female. Her and Chris Vargo are very, very fast. I don't want to say Chris Vargo's not fast down hills. Chris Vargo's the slowest person I know. Sally McRae is, if there's 5 of us going down a trail and we're all kind of like hauling balls, she just takes off. And I don't know where that comes from, but she's like, just kick your butt, just kick your butt. I'm like, okay, and I'll start trying it, and it's super weird. It's super uncomfortable, but obviously it works for her because the more you do it, it becomes more natural. And she flies downhill, and she doesn't necessarily worry about traction,
Well, she's out of control. I mean, but she's under control and out of control at the same time, and she's using free speed. I mean, I've seen her run down hills on video, and she's using gravity's free speed.
Gravity, yeah. I've always been told if you're going downhill, let your body go because gravity's going to do 90% of the work for you.
Yeah.
Any experience with Skechers Go Run Ride 3? I haven't had any Skechers experience. I was very hesitant early on to adapt or to try them out, but now I can't wait to get my foot in a pair of any of the new Skechers. and the Ultra Trail looks awesome as well.
The Skechers Go Run Ride 3 is a good shoe. My primary experience is in the Go Run Ultra. The Go Run Speed 2, by the way, is a badass shoe. But the Go Run, just the Go Run, not the Go Run Ride, the naming system is a little
I was
questionable.
gonna say the name. I can already
Well, so
figure
the
out a
Go
dislike.
Run, right, the Go Run is kind of more performance oriented. So it's like I don't know. The Go Run Ride is less performance oriented than the Go Run. Then the Speed is like your speed shoe. So the Go Run 3, that was the first Skechers shoe that I put on. I put it on and I was like, you've got to be kidding me that this is a Skechers running shoe. Skechers are legit. Don't anybody that goes, oh, they're Skechers Performance, which they want to be known as Skechers Performance, this particular branch, they're legit. They're for real legit. So don't write them off, anybody. And by the way, I did not do a 45-minute review of the Hitogami. It was 11 minutes, 11 minutes and 45 seconds. Smartass, whoever
I
wrote
love
that.
it. Who else loves Montreal shoes? Says Hawk Daddy. I have yet to try them. I know that I'm gonna like them, but I do believe I have some pairs of their new stuff coming, which I'm excited about. They're a little
Yeah.
bit more minimal or reduced than a typical running shoe. I believe they're also zero drop. I believe.
4 the Fluid
Four
Flex are
millimeter,
4.
yeah. The Fluid Flex are 4 millimeter. You're right.
Yeah, I haven't worn those either, but somebody on my YouTube channel said that they consider the Fluid Flex shoes to be kind of like a road. It was interesting. He said a trail cousin rather, of the Fresh Foam, which is interesting. So
Interesting.
we'll see what that
I
means.
may not like that. Ethan, I think the best advice you gave was to me, which was you should go to your pro running store and ask your local pro. Yeah, as far as best running shoes for you, totally agree, Owen. Johnny Bertram, I got a pass to the Adidas employee store here in Portland last week. Picked up a pair of the new Boost 2s, half off. I've never liked Adidas running shoes, but these won me over. Anyone tried Boost? I have not tried Boost. Chris Fargo used to run in Boost, and he really, really liked them. Now he's in the Nike stuff. Really, really likes those. But I have yet to try the Boost. Again, marketing. You gotta. Anytime you look at a shoe, especially a shoe that's like, here's new technology, here's something new, this has never been done, check this out. First thing in your head that goes off needs to be an alarm, so you can at least address this openly and go, okay, this is marketing. Is it actually going to help me run faster? Is it actually going to help me spring forward better? You know, all that kind of stuff. You just have to ask yourself those questions. But then you also got to go try on the shoes. If it's something that interests you, go try them on. If it works for you, then it works for you. But anytime I see something like that, an alarm goes off in my head. And having worked in marketing before, you just have to know that they're throwing these words at you and throwing this technology at you to buy their shoes. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the bottom line.
And a lot of times marketing departments, particularly if it's a marketing firm, they're not always on the ground level with the people that are developing shoes. They should be, and most of the time they are, but sometimes they just miss the mark, and it's kind of like,
They should be, but sometimes they aren't.
yeah, I mean the Fresh Foam is. I hate to keep coming back to that because I enjoyed running in that shoe, but the marketing was. I just don't understand, but whatever.
Yeah, I had expectations for that shoe, and when it didn't meet those expectations, but it met different expectations, I was just thrown off. And that to me was my big disconnect with that particular shoe. It's like I was expecting this because this is what you told me it was. It
Right.
was this. If you told me it was this, I would have looked at it like this, and it would have been a different review. You know, it's that kind of thing. So,
Well, and that's one of the things I said in my review. I said, people, it's for me, I can accept that, what you just said, I can accept the marketing being misleading. The problem I have is, what if Joe Schmo, who's looking for something that has a crap load of cushioning, goes and picks up the shoe? He's not going to be happy, and so
yeah.
that's where the issue comes in for me. But,
Yeah. Mitch Wellenfeld said, just ordered my first pair of Hokas, opposite of minimalist shoes. Also have been running in the Ultra Olympus, Ethan. You need to try. They are super cushy, not firm like the other Ultras. This is the Paradigm, which is the road version of the Olympus. And when I first got this, I was like, okay, I don't know. It's a fucking giant clown-looking shoe, right? But uh, man, I really like it. I really do. And if the Olympus is anything like this shoe, I'm in for a treat because Ultra threw me for a loop with the first three pairs of shoes they sent me. The Lone Peak 1.5 and the Torin 1 and Torin 1.5. Both of those, or all three of those shoes, just were like, you know what? I get it. I get the zero drop. I get the white toe box. I like that. But these shoes just aren't. They're not dialed in yet. They're not nailed.
Yeah.
Finally trying a shoe of theirs, and I'm like, you know what? I think they might have something here. So wait for the review on these. And I also got the One Squared, which is their shoe, the One, but it's the second version of that. And haven't run in that yet, but I'm excited to. I've worn them. They look like bowling shoes. I really like that. Johnny, just know that the new Gravity lugs will be pretty firm at first compared to the Sir Isaacs. Each time I bought new Gravities, I had to wait about 3 weeks of running in them to dial it in. Yeah, I think that's about right as far as kind of breaking the shoes in. Cheers from Utah. Yeah. Welcome. Picked up some unloved original Kinvara Trails for $37. Killer kicks for narrow feet. I always wondered about Saucony and their Kinvara Trails versus the Kinvara Roads. I felt like it was two different companies making two different shoes with the same name. Because the Kinvara Roads, I'm a big fan of the Kinvara Roads. I always have been. I haven't tried the 5s yet. I'm excited to. But then the Trails were just like not even in the same ballpark. It just felt like a totally different shoe, totally narrow, not even remotely cush or comfortable. And I haven't reviewed them yet. I need to get a pair of the new ones. But have you done either of those, Brandon? You've done the Kinvaras, but have you done the
Kinvaras? Yeah. I've only ever tried on the Kinvara Trails, and you're right. It's a complete it's like, wait, who are these made by?
Yeah, it's not even the same shoe.
It's a disconnect, and I'm confused by is it the Kinvara and then the Peregrine, and then there's some other super beefy trail shoe, and the Peregrine and the Kinvara, if I'm not mistaken, are both 4 mil drops. I don't understand why there are those two different shoes, but
I tried I tried the Peregrine version 1 very early on. I was really excited because I was such a fan of the Kinvara. I was like, oh, the Peregrine is the trail version of the Kinvara. I hated it. I hated that first version. Hated it. I think they've changed a lot of things since then. This was before I did shoe reviews, so I never really got into another pair. But I know a lot of people that run ultras and long distance trail races in the Peregrine. Super grippy outsole, really talon-like.
Yeah.
And Brandon, great topics today, guys. I'll be sending this on to so many people. Thank you, Newton Runner.
Thanks, dude. Somebody says, why do shoe companies change the models each year? God, me. I mean,
money. It's got to be money. You want to take the dollars.
Yeah, I mean, and they think, the thing is that if you look at like the Kinvara 1, then the Kinvara 2, 3, 4, and now 5, if you look at all these things, there's a change. They make some changes that you look at and you go, oh, that's better. That's so much better. But then it's like they sacrifice things elsewhere. And I'm not picking on Kinvara, but there just seems like they change the things that should be changed for the better, but then they also change things that were fine. But again, everybody's foot is different, so opinions are like booty holes.
Just lost booty holes.
Booty holes.
Someone asked, what are the best Newtons to run 1K to 3K distances? I mean, I don't think there's a Newton to run a specific distance. I think just Newtons are Newtons, right? There's the race version, the distance. Well, actually, there's other versions now, but the distance is more of that lightweight marathon distance shoe. The Gravities are kind of the trainer version. At least in my opinion, they may have added more to the lineup.
I'd say the MB3.
MB3 for the shorter distances? I mean, if they're looking for speed?
Yeah, for that type of stuff. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to just go fast and it's going to be over pretty quick, I'd say that. That'd be pretty good,
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. I refreshed my chat and it just exploded. Absolutely exploded. So I'm so sorry because the YouTube chat room just does a horrible job of updating. Oh my God. Okay. I'm going to pick up at Rob Langlois. Skechers, really. Gomebs, yeah. When is the Gorge 50K coming out, Ginger? Wednesday night, Thursday morning, hopefully. There's 3 of them. That's why it's taking so long, because I'm doing a behind-the-scenes video, which is encompassing the entire weekend, which that one's just now finished. And I have the 50K video and the 100K video, which are going to be kind of different. So I'm editing those tonight, tomorrow, and Wednesday. Ugh. And hopefully getting those. I'm excited. I love doing it. I just know it's a ton of work. So those will hopefully be up Wednesday night, Thursday. I want to get them to you guys as soon as possible because I know you guys love race videos. Great show, guys. Thanks, Newton Runner. If you don't swim, just trust me. He was almost Olympic worthy back then, says N7711.
Wait, who said that?
N London 0711.
I wonder who the hell that is.
I don't know who that is. It could be that could be a comment in relation to something else in the chat room. I have no idea. I can't go back up higher.
Gotcha.
Anthony Bucci says non-shoe question. Is there something for finger swelling? That usually maybe in my mind has something to do with heat acclimation or circulation. I don't want to say it's a. I know some people say salt with swelling, but I also am under the mindset now that salt isn't always an issue, or salt isn't always the root of all these problems, as cramping or swelling. I mean, it could be. I don't know. Have you been hydrating?
Right. Well, I think that with anything, if it's a mix of electrolytes, salt or sodium, magnesium, potassium, calcium. With a lot of times with swelling, of course, it could be just too much salt. You're retaining water.
That's what I was thinking. Is maybe it's too much salt. Maybe, and not just from running. It has nothing to do with running. It has to do with your diet. Right. So maybe check out the salt intake in your regular diet. Are you eating more chips, more stuff like that? Are you eating lots of barbecue chicken? All these other things that just contribute to high sodium levels. Lots of soup. Are you eating lots of Campbell's soup?
I have pureed barbecue chicken in my fuel belt when I run 5Ks. So
what is it?
Pureed barbecue chicken. I have pureed barbecue chicken in my fuel belt, but only on 5Ks.
Lindsay Neufeld says, Ethan, answer this. But it has arrows pointing up, and I don't know what she wants me to answer. I'm sorry. Maybe she says later when I scroll down. I need Brandon to watch me swim and help get me faster.
Done.
That also sounds a little creepy.
Somebody asked about the fastest or the best zero drop Newton. There's only one zero drop Newton, so you're probably going to go with the MV3 on that.
MV3.
Yeah.
Fuel belt versus hydration pack. I think it depends on the race, the distance,
and the volume,
type of race, and the volume. Yeah. I use hydration packs for ultras primarily. Honestly, the reason I've been wearing hydration packs in races is to hold my GoPro, because there's no other way for me to hold my GoPro without holding it in my hand, and that's annoying. I usually will use a bottle handheld or 2 bottles handheld, but the hydration packs allowed me to put the 2 bottles up front and then go hands-free and keep my GoPro in the back. For marathon, I'll go with 1 handheld, and that's just because I don't trust water stations. I learned my lesson the hard way, so I'll fill up my bottle and fill it whenever I can, or if I need to.
Why does a 5K need an aid station? Because some people take a long time on a 5K.
Yeah, just because you run it in 20 minutes doesn't mean everyone does.
Yeah. Let's see.
Charlie Wingard.
Yeah.
Ginger,
Sorry, go ahead.
Ginger, have you had the chance to run in the new Newton bottles? I already talked about them. The review will be coming soon. There's a fly that keeps flying around me, the little asshole. Great show, guys. Dropping knowledge bomb, says Russell Anderson. I would, in regards to the swelling question earlier, the Newton Runner says, I would have said ice it, Anthony, but after reading a new article that says ice is bad, I have to say I don't know. I felt bad for writing crap because I didn't want to steal your thunder. Yes, it's me, JT. Hey, what's up, JT? William says, great show, many thanks. He has to wake up and run in like 6.5 hours East Coast time. Get your sleep, William, get your sleep. John Albert, I have several friends who are cyclists that swear by supplementing creatine. The studies I've read so far have been divided. Do any of you know endurance athletes who supplement creatine? I use creatine. I used that in high school to try to gain muscle mass.
I believe it's called getting swole.
Creatine is getting swole because it retains. What does it retain? Does it just retain water?
I don't
Routine
know,
is
but if
something that
you,
allows you to build your muscle mass. The second you stop working out or you stop taking it, it just flushes out of your system.
yeah, you can also, if you're not working out enough while taking certain amounts of creatine, you
You get
can get
fat.
fat. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right, and that's
That
why
also happens if you just don't run.
also true.
That also happens if you miss the train and race part and just include the beer part.
Just include the beer. I should make a train race beer in moderation or after races.
Right.
Uh, okay. Thanks, Newton Runner, but I'm talking about while I'm on a HPT run. I just went on one and I had sausage fingers. I think it's a diet. I think it's a diet issue or warm temperature issue, acclimation or circulation. Uh,
So Owen Hill here says, would you suggest Newtons to a natural heel striker like me? The first thing that I would say is to go run barefoot, and I'll guarantee you that you're not striking with your heel. If anything, you're gently touching the ground with your heel, which is called proprioceptive heel striking. It's kind of like if you can imagine walking around your house in the dark, pitch black, and you have your hands out in front of you to feel where you're going. That's what your heel is doing. You're not touching something hard. It's just gently stroking the ground, gently touching the ground so you can figure out exactly what's coming next. So I would first figure that thing out, and then I would go something probably like a Sir Isaac or something with rubber in the heel.
yeah. Jeff Allen asks, Ethan, you seem to be a big advocate of the zero drop. Is the Solomon Mantra Pro, Solomon Mantras or Solomon Pros, an exception then? Yes, I'm a fan of the zero drop idea. Most of the shoes that I run in or that I like, if you look at any of my reviews, anywhere between 6 and lower millimeter drop, I tend to favor purely because they allow for a more natural gait for me. The Hitagami was an exception. There's always going to be exceptions to my rules, but the Hitagami really surprised me because it might be 9 millimeter drop, but it didn't feel like a 9 millimeter drop. The Solomon Sense Mantras and the Solomon Sense Pros, I believe, are 6 millimeter drops, and they don't feel like 6 millimeters. They feel like a lot less. The Solomon Sense Ultras, which are those $200 beasts of shoes that all of the elite Solomon runners wear, are 4 millimeter drop. I think the new one might be 0, but originally they were 4 millimeter drop, and they felt like 0 because for some reason when you wear those shoes on level ground, they're built in a way that just helps you feel like you're at 0. And the
Yeah.
Solomon Sense and the Sense Pros are much better about making that 6 millimeter drop feel like 4, anywhere from 2 to 4. It's real subtle, but yeah, I still really like those shoes. They're great.
Matt Miner says, guys, what are my options for a low drop, mild to moderate support shoe? Been in the Nike Wild Horse, but I need a little more support. The first thing, and we didn't really touch on this because it just wasn't part of the conversation.
Yeah.
This idea that your foot needs support, I find wrong almost all the time. Think about it like this: the St. Louis Arch, while it's not a parabolic arch, I forget what type of arch it's called, but for lack of a better example, the arch of your foot is like a parabolic arch, kind of like a slung back St. Louis Arch. When was the last time you saw scaffolding under the St. Louis Arch, which, by the way, weighs thousands of pounds? When was the last time you saw a support structure under this thing that is supporting this incredible amount of weight? In fact, an egg is also a series of parabolic arches just attached so that it forms a circle. You could stand on an egg without breaking it. So what makes you think that your foot, which has been under your body for your entire life, needs support? I just don't think that. So anyway, that may not be what you mean by support, Matt, so I don't mean to come off like that. But if that's what you mean, if you mean like arch support or pronation support or something like that, first take it back to 0. Think what you can accomplish by strengthening your foot first, rather than going for support that way. But in terms of a low drop shoe, I don't know about trail, but the Saucony Mirage is basically the stability version of the Kinvara, essentially.
Yeah. The continuation of that question was he has been in the Wild Horse for a while and he felt it lacked support. And so my question to him is, what do you mean by lacked support? Do you mean lacks arch? Do you mean lacks heel counter? Do you mean lacks wrap support? Like, what support are you talking about?
Right.
Because I think a lot of people think they are referring to support, but they might be referring to something else. So maybe it needs more tightening or needs more cushion in certain places for you.
Right. Agreed. Yeah.
David Cubero asks, I just picked up Nike Wild Horse and Terra Kigers. How did the Nike work for you? I'm guessing the question was for me. I ran the Wild Horse. I ran the 50K, Gorge 50K, and the Wild Horse, and I really liked it. I think that it needs. I'm going to get to those reviews next week. I'm dropping both the Kiger and the Wild Horse, so stay tuned for that. My major dislike with the Wild Horse is that there's no rock plate or no sort of real protection from real big, sharp rocks and stuff like that. It was fine. I dealt with it. My feet felt pretty good that night and the next day, so it wasn't a huge issue, but it's just a recommendation. If you're going to have a Kiger and a Wild Horse, why not make one the Speed Demon and one the more technical shoe? So I'll get to that in the reviews. Meehan Residence, Ethan, what are your favorite road shoes? Did you watch the show? Were you here for the last hour and a half? Basically, what I'm going to tell you might not apply to you. So if I tell you what my favorite road shoes are, it doesn't mean that they're going to be your favorite road shoes. But if you're asking, let me tell you 37 different road shoes that I really like. Because seemingly how many shoes I'm rotating through right now currently. No, I have a number of shoes. I love Kinvaras. I love Newton Distance. I'm looking down because I like the new Ultra Paradigm just because they're fresh. Fresh on the boat. I have another bunch of. I like the Hoka Bondis. But again, those are tools. Those are tools for specific needs. I use a lot of those extra cushion shoes for recovery runs. So after long races or long distances, if I'm running on flat roads or something, I'll use those extra cushion shoes for those recovery runs just to kind of take it easy on my body. I can't answer this question. Hey, Brandon, what are your favorite shoes?
I just did the. This is not a road shoe. I like the Hitagamis right now. I'm done with that.
I'll say that. I forgot the Hitagamis. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a road shoe that I just finished up with. You know what? Actually, the Patagonia Everlong is a trail shoe by their definition, but it does quite well on the road.
I agree. I ran more roads in that shoe while I was up in Seattle than I did trails.
Yeah, I think it should be part of Solomon's doing that city trail line. Mm-hmm. I think that could easily be a shoe that falls into that category. And the Skechers Speed 2 for a zippier shoe, but also Topo Athletic has their Topo ST is pretty whip fast and super light. And also, Ethan, I don't know if you've tried these or not. On running.
I have not.
It's an interesting concept because they have these little pods on the bottom. I'm sure you've seen them. And people think, just by looking at it, that they're supposed to be boingy, but that's not the case. Those little pods, what they're meant to do is to slow the impact, so to provide cushion with very little material. So essentially, they were inspired by cut-up pieces of a garden hose. And their racer, their on Cloud Racer, I reviewed it last year's version, last summer I think, and I liked it. It's not durable. It's not very durable. You may get 200 miles out of it, maybe, but it's got a super firm strobo board, really quick action, and it's got a decent amount of cushioning and a pretty low drop, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, interesting. I'll have to check them out. I mean, I've seen pictures of them. I'm familiar with the technology, but I didn't realize that it was more to slow your foot impact rather than. I thought it was just like, ooh, super soft cushioning, but using a different technology to do it. I think they look goofy. I mean, they can't get around it with that technology, right?
Yeah, I'll send you the. We'll talk. I'll send you the person.
Let's see. I strike far forward. Any advice on getting more efficient? Brandon can answer this way quicker than I could.
Where you land, it's fine. I would, again, take off your shoes and socks, go for a 2-minute run on some nice, clean, flat concrete or asphalt. Get your foot back underneath you, and really remember to relax your heel. Your heel needs to touch the ground. If you're landing way far forward, the chances are you're overstriding. And if you are barefoot, your body won't let you, your brain won't let you overstride like that. So I'd take 5 minutes. Take a 10-minute run barefoot. You're not going to hurt yourself. It's okay. And don't do a gym floor either. Do concrete. Something that if you overstride, it's going to go, don't do that. And gym floor is too soft. It's too smooth. It's like glass. And for that matter, a track. A track is all that what do they call it? Cinder stuff. That'll tear your feet up to pieces. So asphalt or
Oh
concrete is
yeah,
probably pretty good.
yeah.
Let's
That stuff just absolutely tears the feet apart. It's bad.
Jim McGucket says next thing you know, somebody will be telling me K-Swiss is legit. I
I know.
don't.
I read that. I think that's funny.
I don't.
There's some triathletes that run in K-Swiss. Some
Well,
triathletes run. But you have to remember that every professional athlete runs in those shoes because they're paid to run in those shoes.
well,
You
and they're
know?
also. I mean, like somebody brought up this earlier. Somebody running in Air Pegasus, like Mo Farah running in the Air Pegs. Here's the deal with that is that almost all the time, those shoes, while they may be an Air Pegasus, is kind of like um, looking at a NASCAR race and going, "Oh, look, that guy's driving a Chevy Malibu." No, he's not. he's he's driving a shoe that looks like a Chevy Malibu. It says Malibu on it, but it's believe me, it's not. It's a custom built deal underneath.
Yeah.
I promise you that. Almost that's not the case across the board, but for a large majority of athletes, that is the case.
Russell Anderson, non-shoe question. Ran my first 30K race last weekend. Been running for about 20 months. Killed the 30K. Thinking about going for a 50K trail race at the end of May. Too much too soon, or give it a shot? I mean, if you've been running for 20 months, so almost a couple years, and you did a 30K, which is, what does that work out to be? Like almost 18, 20 miles-ish, somewhere in there, because 22K is a half marathon. Um, Going up to 50K, I can't tell you yay or nay because I don't know what your 30K was. If it was a trail 30K, if you dealt with elevation at all. Most 50Ks, not all, but most 50Ks deal with elevation, hills, trail, technical, all sorts of different types of things that you need to take into consideration when training for an event like that. It is now the second week of April. If you're going for a race in May, you have about a month to train for it. I don't know what your distances are per week. It depends on what your long runs are. If your long runs are in the 20 to 25 miles, then maybe you should also run a marathon first. Maybe run a marathon to kind of dial in that nutrition and dial in that bonk phase, because there's going to be a bonk phase that happens if you haven't run longer than 20 miles. If you go run a marathon, you're going to bonk somewhere in there because it just your body's just not used to it. So it's going to happen. Not everyone will, but most people will most likely have some sort of body rejection of distance and nutrition. So you just need to figure that stuff out. It's much easier to dial that in on training runs leading up to a big race, so giving yourself that time to adapt before you go into a race. That way your confidence level is turned to 11, because you want to go into a race like that with that confidence turned up, knowing that you can tackle it, conquer it, and feel good at the end. You don't want to cross that finish line bleeding and vomiting and stuff like that. That's never fun.
Yeah. I'd also add to try to mimic race conditions at least once during your training.
Oh, hell
That's
yeah.
going to bump your confidence also. I commented earlier on something. Lori Hall had a comment about she
Yeah,
runs.
Lori's a big fan of the show. Lori's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and she says here that I need to change my form. Then I was thinking that being way up on my forefoot was best, but I am suffering from a tibial stress fracture now. That's anytime you're stopping your body from moving forward, you're asking for pain. So, yeah, Lori, good. But I mean, take your time. A stress fracture like that, go to the doctor as much as you can. Get them to be very, very conservative in your estimates of how long it's going to take to come back. It's better than winging it.
Yeah.
You wing it, you could be out way long.
Very, very true. Eater's fan. If Ginger Runner has a local trail race director as a guest, could he ask why hasn't anyone put together a USATF certified course so people could qualify for Boston in a local trail marathon?
Do they do that?
I don't know. My first instinct is, why would you want to try to qualify for Boston on a trail marathon? Because in my experience, trail marathons are way tougher. because you're dealing with elevation profiles. A typical marathon will have anywhere from 50 to 250 feet of elevation gain over the course of the course. That's a guesstimate. There are some marathons that have upwards of 1,000. I believe the Big Sur Marathon is like 1,200 feet of elevation change over the course of 26 miles. Every 50K that I have raced has a minimum of 4,000 to 5,000 feet of elevation change. So we're talking 4 to 5 times the Big Sur, which is a very hilly Boston qualifying sanctioned race, but very few people will qualify for Boston at that race just because it's more difficult. Why not make it easy on yourself? Brandon and I have talked about qualifying for Boston on what was the race in Philly?
No, I think we talked. Oh, there was the
Virginia?
Mohawk Valley. We talked about Mohawk Valley, but we also talked about Shamrock Marathon in Virginia Beach.
Right, Virginia Beach. Make it
Yeah.
easy on yourself. Find a net downhill race, so you're going to get that added benefit of
There's
down.
but the problem is that, see, I don't know how that works because you remember a few years ago. I'm sure if it's a certified course, you can qualify for Boston on it, net downhill or not. But this is let me start over. If you're going to run a 2:03 marathon, do you remember a couple years ago when the marathon world record was broken at Boston? This was
Yeah.
several years ago.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it didn't
yeah.
count
Didn't count.
because Boston is a net downhill race. That doesn't matter toward Boston qualifying. Go for it. Break if you can go and run the down Mount Washington marathon, have a good time. And then buy a new set of knees. Because you're going to need them.
So I would love to bring on a race director and talk to him about getting the USATF. That seems like a really legit organization lately, by the way. Talking to them about figuring out a trail marathon to be Boston qualifying. I mean,
I hear they have a new
sure.
sponsor. It's Nike.
That's it. That's it. Let's see. Also, the creatine, when not fully used by the body, converts to fat. That's what it is. Jim is correct. Creatine, when not used by the body, immediately turns into fat. That's why when you see people take creatine and they don't work out, they get fat. They get huge bellies, distended bellies, and it's kind of hilarious. You're like, oh, you're a creatine lifter. I can tell. Thinking about trying the Ultra shoe. I have been running in the Gravitas for the last few years. Thoughts, please. Man, I wish. I don't know if this is in response to anything specific. Bryant Donelia. I don't know if you're referring to the Skechers Ultra shoe or just an Ultra shoe in general. I don't believe Newton makes an Ultra shoe. If you're referring to the Newton line, and they no longer call it the Gravitas. I think it's just the Gravity.
Yeah, they kind of went away from the Latin.
The Latin terminology.
Eater's fan says it looks like Spira shoes. I've never tried Spira shoes. Number one, looks like Spira shoes kind of claim their shoes had springs, so they enhanced performance but couldn't be banned. Spira shoes do have springs. They didn't claim it. They do have springs. They also had the, if I'm not mistaken, the worst. I'm gonna look this up. The worst logo ever. Because if I'm not mistaken, when they first came out, their logo, there was some shoe that was in Sky Mall or something, and they have these springy things too, and their logo looks like a sperm. True story.
Oh man, really?
Yeah.
Well done, guys. Well done.
Speaking of marketing departments effing it up, it wasn't Spear, it was something else. Sorry.
Eaters fan says good analysis, but there is a trail marathon in Northern California, Biz something that people use to qualify for Boston. So I don't know if that was the same person that asked about the USATF. Qualifying isn't a problem. I would rather do it on a trail marathon.
Qualifying is not a problem? Good on you.
If qualifying for Boston's not a problem for you, then just do it, I guess. Rather than wait for a trail marathon to be Boston qualifying legal, just go find. There are marathons that run alongside the road on dirt track, like the gravel pavement and stuff like that. You can find a race like that, I guess. I mean, I understand you want to do it on a trail, primarily because it's probably lower impact, I'm guessing. If you really want to qualify for Boston that bad, you have to remember that Boston is a road marathon. So by qualifying on a trail marathon, it's not necessarily going to prepare you for the Boston, which is on road. So I would, my best advice is to qualify on a road marathon that best simulates the Boston, because you sound like you're really fast. So if you want to run Boston, you probably want to run it really fast. So simulate your Boston experience by running a really fast road marathon.
Hmm.
Uh,
Dallas has a question. He says, Ethan, Brandon, where do you think the sport of ultra trail running
hmm.
will grow into down the years? It seems like a lot of fast road runners are killing the 50-mile trail scene.
This is definitely a topic I want to talk about in a future episode as well,
Yeah.
because I'm not scared of where it's going. I think I'm new. I'm very, very new to ultra running. I've met people who have been running since I was born. There was a guy that I raced with for a while at
18 years ago?
18 years ago. There was someone that I ran alongside at the Cuyamaca 100K that started racing in the 80s, racing ultras in the 80s. So he was running long before that, just other distances, but he was running ultras in the 80s. So this sport has been around for a very long time. So I would like to talk to one of them about how they think the sport is changing and where they think it's going and if they like it. For me, I'm happy and kind of unhappy because the sport is getting fast. Road runners who are just killing the road distances, it's super fast guys. Maybe they're not going to be pro-level world-class elite marathoners on road distances. It's such a competitive elite field that they transition over to trails and they just kick major ass, right? So they're doing super amazing things on trail races at longer distances and stuff, and they're getting tons of press and they're just killing it because, there's not, I'm not going to say there's not a ton of fast guys because there's so many fast people, but I think that the sport is going to become so much faster in the coming years, and that is exciting because I love watching these races and just to see these times of like world records just drop. I think it's really cool. But I'm also going to be frustrated because I'm going to be running those races, and I'm going to be the guy that's, going from the front mid-packer to mid-packer, and hell, someday it's probably going to be like back of the pack because I can't run, a sub 2:30 marathon or something. So it's
But
going to be interesting.
don't you think though? I mean, there's some truth to that, but then there's like marathons in general, and I don't have the marathon report that is USA Running or whoever puts out every year, the annual marathon report, and it's like everybody's lamenting over the past few years that average marathon finishing times back in the 70s, 60s and 70s when marathons kind of started out, average marathon finishing times were like sub 3 hours almost all the time. But then over the years, it's gotten to where like the men's average finish time is something like, I don't know, 4:16 or whatever it is this past year. But it gets that way because more and more people start to get into it, and so the law of averages says that you have all these people that are kind of going into it just to accomplish it rather than to race it. That averaging finish time, and there's going to be there's going to be a glut of slower people, and I don't mean that as a bad thing because I would probably be among them. You're going to have this glut of slower people coming into a race that would otherwise have been very elite. You know what I mean? So, like,
Yeah.
20 years ago, the average marathon finishing time was much faster, but there was like not even 1/4 of the number of people participating in races today.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think with the influx of fast roadies joining the ultra scene and the trail running scene, so not all ultras are trail races and not all trails are ultras.
Right.
So you see the influx of these faster races. I think it will also bring an influx of just runners in general, people who are getting tired of the road scene, and that these huge 35,000 people marathons are going to come to the trails. Yeah, that's a really good point. And on that side of things, I get excited when I hear people running their first trail race or their first ultra race. They saw a video or something, maybe a race that I ran, and they're like, "Oh, I want to run a trail race," and they go do it, and they accomplish it, and it's this huge goal, and then they accomplish it. So that's really inspiring to me, and it's really cool to see that kind of thing. I would like to bring on someone who's been running ultras since the 80s and one of the old school guys and find out what they think of this influx of new people, including myself, because I am so new to this scene, a couple of years, that they probably look at me and go, "Who the fuck is this new guy coming and hanging a GoPro out on a pole and filming this race? Like this is a race that I've been running since '88, and here he is with a GoPro at the end of a pole, and he's making a mockery of this sport." So I'm not saying anyone thinks that, but maybe. So I'd be curious
Oh,
to.
there are people that think. I mean,
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, I know there are people that that malign race series like the 13.1 series or like the rock and roll series. And I've over the years, this is several years ago, I actually got into an argument, a virtual argument, which are the best kind because everyone looks like a dick. Um, I got into an argument. Well, I got into an argument with somebody because, and he and I have since chatted and we kind of reconciled everything. But he said, the 13-point run one series is aimed at the quote hands raised over your head as you cross the finish line crowd, and I thought that was a really just entirely elitist and really just shitty way to look at it. And he was having a hard time just looking at it for people. These are people that 13.1 miles of running might be the biggest physical accomplishment for them. I mean, you don't know, that person could be somebody who was 300 pounds, 6 months earlier or whatever, which would be ridiculous weight loss. But you get the point. This is a huge accomplishment for somebody. So, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be somebody like that, but screw them.
The Newton Runner says the Boston is the net downhill, and I find it tougher on the body than on a flat course. The quads die, and the back and hips get pretty stiff. I think we're still talking about the Boston qualifying stuff. So having run ultras and having trained on terrain and instances that reflect the race course, would training on courses and training runs very similar to the Boston run with net downhills, would that training on those surfaces, wouldn't that help your overall experience at Boston and not getting dead quads and back issues and stuff like that? Why not run races leading up to Boston that mirror or mimic that course? I mean, I know Boston is its own thing. You're going to push yourself a certain way at Boston because it is Boston. I have not run Boston, so I can't speak to that course. But taking my training for ultras, why not do that for the Boston? And why not train on the exact same course?
I think the trouble with Boston is that the first 15 miles are pretty downhill, but then you've got from 16 to like 21, and I know this because I'm looking at a course map.
Course
16 to 21 are uphill. I mean, they're substantially uphill, and then it goes downhill from there to the end. Actually, 24 to 26 is pretty flat. But, I mean, so it's like you trash your quads in the beginning. It's like all the quad trashing happens in the very beginning and then the very end. And so there's that. It's like you beat your quads up, and then you call on your quads to act for 16 to 21, and they're like, screw you. And then, they've got to come back in the end. So I've heard the same thing.
But why not throw training runs in there? So, you're doing all these training runs leading up to Boston, and do a 20-miler where the first 12 miles are downhill, and then you turn around and you run back up. Do an out and back.
That's true.
Do a downhill out, and you can find that stuff no matter where you live. You can find that type of, maybe you do have to go to the trails to do that. Maybe you do have to take some trail days where you run up and run down a trail or reverse it or whatever. Just taking my experience with all these ultras, or any trail race in particular, where you're dealing with elements where, like, I have 7,000 feet of elevation over the course of 20 miles. I need to train for that. So,
you think?
You can't just go, I'm going to go for my regular 20-mile loop and come back and be ready for this ultra. It's like, no, you need to go train on Mount Baldy in Southern California to get a certain amount of elevation and a certain amount of mileage. And any of those runs, they absolutely help and contribute to your performance on race day. I'm looking at Gorge 50K, my most recent race, as a perfect example. I trained some of my longer runs to have a steep-ass, bitch-ass hill late in the run because I knew this course had a 1,700-foot climb over the course of a mile and a half, or like 2 miles or something like that at mile 26. So I knew that going into it, trained for it. It kicked my ass, but that's where I passed 5 or 6 people was going up that climb. So it kicked my ass, but it kicked their ass harder. Uh, that's an interesting discussion. I think we can talk with training and stuff like that. And I
Yeah.
love to talk to these guys about that, especially Peter's fan and the Newton runner, because I know you guys are obviously talking about Boston, and that's eventually a goal for mine.
For
To
my,
hey. Well, there was some other question in here. Jeff Allen talks about Sage Canada. Yeah, road guy coming to trails and killing it. Same with Chris Vargo, road guy, cyclist as well, coming to trail. I don't know if maybe he wasn't a road guy. Actually, you need to talk about that. He was cyclist for sure, but now he's just kicking ass on trail. I think it's because he's super fast that I thought he was a road guy before. I don't know. I'll have to ask him. But there's a lot of guys like that. Romo, I know you have run in Squamish, but have you run in trails in Whistler? Just signed up for the Meet Your Maker 50 miler and was wondering if the train would be similar to your video. Romo, I don't know if you're local up in Vancouver or any of that area up there. Squamish and Whistler are within 30 minutes of each other. The mountain range is exactly the same. Whistler is a little bit higher elevation. You get more snow, but the terrain is almost identical. You're dealing with extreme technical trails. Not just rocks, we're talking roots, rocks, mud, dirt, soft and hard, exposed granite, exposed basalt, but also really steep inclines, really short, steep, so quarter of a mile, half mile, mile to 2 miles long, turning around and coming right back down. It's a lot of this on really technical terrain. It'll beat you up, spit you out, and not call your mom to tell her. I don't even, that's the horrible analogy, I don't know. But yeah, Meet Your Maker is a very similar race to the Squamish 50. I want to do that someday. I think that race would be really fun. Just up in Whistler. How did you like the North Face Endurance Challenge in San Francisco? I think it's great. It was my first ultra. It'll always have a place in my heart. I ran the 50K 2 years ago, 50 miler last year, running the 50 miler this year, and it's good. They just do a good organization. I think their aid stations need watermelon and veggie broth. Other than that, the race is good. Very specific.
that is very specific.
It is very specific.
And yellow
Brandon,
toothpaste, yes.
and yellow toothpaste. Brandon, any last words? Any bit of advice for runners out there, maybe who need guidance in shoes in particular? Just running in general. Anything? Any last thoughts?
I feel like in running in general, go back to zero. Go back to where your body started, not to where you started as a runner. And look to what's less before you look to what's more. It's more important. And I'm not saying you have to go to a zero drop. I'm not saying that. The first thing I would say is to strip away all the various accoutrements that you have acquired over the years. If you've got orthotics, take them out. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to tell you not to, but what to do exactly, rather. But a podiatrist is going to prescribe an orthotic to address the situation. Again, I use the cast analogy. I can use braces now. If you put braces on when you're 11 years old, if you're 40 years old, do you still have those braces on, or do you take them off at some point? Take your body back to zero, back to what it was meant to do. Use strength and use biomechanics to address the issues that you're having. And then if you've truly got a chronic issue that's really a problem that cannot be addressed by strength or fitness or proper technique, then it might be time to talk to a physician or a TP or a PT rather, or something like that. In terms of running shoes, again, I think that the trend is going to be kind of going back to what works for you. So once you've stripped all that stuff away and you know which direction you want to go, you know what you're comfortable with, you know where you want your rough drop to be, you know where all those things are, find a shoe that is comfortable to you. If that's a maximalist shoe, fan-freaking-tastic. If it's those Luna sandal things, fan-freaking-tastic. If it's Five Fingers that Ethan threw in the trash can, go to his house, dig them out of the trash can, and wear those. I mean, it doesn't matter what.
Do it.
At the end of the day,
do it.
it doesn't matter what I say or what Ethan says or what any other person on planet says, because it's what we're probably going to say is, guys, put on what works for you. As Ethan said, there are as many unique feet as there are people. So get out there and find what works for you, what's the most comfortable to you. If it's minimalist, great. If it's not, who cares? I mean, but try everything. And don't, at the same time as I'm a big proponent of going to your local run shop, make sure that they're not again, because the box that the shoes that you want to try out are glossy, they're not going to pull them out of the back. That's a real thing that happens. I'm not joking about that. Make sure that you go in and you don't walk away with the first. What's that? Isn't that what they say about buying a car? Never accept the first offer, ever.
Yeah, never yeah.
I mean, maybe you'll negotiate, and that first offer is what winds up looking best. But never accept the first offer. Do some research, and also, again, find somebody who's going to work with you on the return policy so that you can go back. But at the end of the day, find what works for you. Don't let a shoe company or even a coach, for that matter, don't let a coach tell you exactly what you should be running in. A coach should be telling you how to train and how to run, and should be helping you fix your technique. They shouldn't be saying you must be in this pair of shoes. That's garbage.
Garbage. Totally agree. And I believe Vargo will be joining us next week as well. Vargo used to work in a running store and can provide, I'm sure, lots of insight into the backside of things. That also was another sentence that was probably inappropriate. So we can talk to him a little bit more some of those details. I would like to thank all of you guys who have tuned in live, especially for the post show as well, for sticking around and watching. Thank you very much. Really good discussion going on in the chat room. So you guys can continue to do that. As soon as I press stop broadcast, you have to convert it over to just regular YouTube comments, but you can continue to comment on there, and I will check those tomorrow. Another big thank you to Brandon Wood for joining us on tonight's show. The guy is amazing, a wealth of knowledge. If you'd like to follow him on Twitter, go to @thegearist. If you have any more questions, anything that wasn't answered tonight in the chat room, just go shout him out. And I'm sure he is very diligent about getting back to people online, which is really awesome of him. Of course, go to his youtube.com/thegearist. Check out all of his shoe reviews and comment on there and make sure that he knows that you guys are watching. And of course, go to just Gearist.com, not the Gearist, it's Gearist.com.
I should probably buy the Gearist.com, huh?
I mean, yeah, if you're the Gearist across the board, go buy it. Go buy it.
Trademark.
Trademark. Trademark is Brandon's. So thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. We'll see you guys next Monday live at 6 p.m. Pacific. We're going to be talking Lake Sonoma, because Lake Sonoma is being run on Saturday with a stacked field of ultra runners. Some of the best in the world are all congregating in Northern California next weekend. I will not be able to go. I have a wedding, but I have 7, 8, 9, 10 friends that are going to be there documenting it. Not for me, but for themselves. But there'll be video. Sally's running it. Chris is running it. It's going to be awesome. So tune in next Monday live for Ginger Runner Live at 6 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you guys then. Yeah, I hope you guys get out there training. Yeah, thanks, guys. Train hard, race harder, party the hardest, train, race, beer. Bye.